What up, y'all? DBD here. Check this out. So I'm working on a new book called Demystified Mysteries, Oracles, and Oils. And instead of going page by page on the laptop, the book is actually typed. But I had to draw this on paper because instead of me scrolling and going page by page, I'd rather just point to everything on one page. And I had to do that by hand with pencil. So check this out. This new book I'm hoping to drop or make available before Christmas on my website, divinebeingbeingdivine.com. So what we have here is something that I call the dual dose theme of the Naga-Maga-Mago fractal of initiation and the Serpent Body Temple Bible. Kind of a tongue twister. So what we're dealing with is the Serpent Body Temple of the Bible. The Bible is 66 books, beginning with Genesis, ending with Revelation. It's called Apocalypsis in Greek. Apocalypse comes from epoch. Epoch means season. So apocalypse is the end of the season, not the end of the world. It's the end of your old self, and when you burn away the egoic, materialistic, lower self, what's revealed, what's left, is the true you, the higher self, the better, more enlightened, and more refined version of you. Now, I'm here to prove Revelation, the end of the Bible, just begins again in Genesis. So Genesis is just the continuation of Revelation, which is why Genesis in Hebrew is Bereshit. It begins with the letter B, which is the second letter, because it's two implies repeating something a second time, as in doing it again. So where's all of this coming from? Well, it's called the Naga-Maga-Mago fractal. It begins with the Naga, which is serpent. Maga is the female magus who's been initiated. Maga today translates as witch, and a witch is a sorceress. But witchcraft and sorcery was mistranslated. It actually comes from the word pharmakia in the Greek Bible. Pharmakia is where we get pharmacy. It has to do with medicine, pharmacoutria. So the Maga is a pharmakis, also called the Magisa. In the Bible, when Jesus is born, there are magi that come from the east. It doesn't specify the gender. It could be male or female. Maga and Mago together are magi. They weren't three wise men. There were many magi, male and female. Well, the point is that the Naga initiates the Maga and the Maga initiates the Mago. You can't be a Mago or a Magus or a prophet or a king or an anointed one unless you've been anointed by an anointress. And you can't be an anointress unless you know the knowledge of the serpent. Unless you know how to refine the venoms of the Naga and turn it into profit-making oils. Venom-based medicine, theriac. So basically, the entire key is this. The 66 books of the Bible from Genesis to Revelation is a snake eating its tail. A snake has a head, a body, and a tail. The head is Genesis, the body is Numbers, the tail is Revelation. The head of the snake has two fangs, just like the head of the Bible begins with the two trees. I call them the dual dose trees, the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. The tree of knowledge of good and evil is guarded by the serpent, and itself is dual dose themed, good and evil. This tree has two coconuts, this tree has one coconut. The tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. The serpent offers what I call a dual dose fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, because this fruit possesses the good macrodose, curative, and the evil macrodose, poison. Eve takes a bite of this dual dose fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Jesus receives a sponge filled with vinegar after he says, "I thirst," from one of the witnesses. So he receives the second dose. The first dose was in the garden when he was in agony before the crucifixion, in the Garden of Gethsemane. The second dose is on the sponge right here. He bleeds blood and water. Blood is the poison, water is the curative. Between a good thief and a bad thief, good is the curative, which balances the poison. Everyone knows where the hospital symbol comes from. The caduceus, two snakes on a staff, that staff is a medical rod. The two serpents, one is dope, one is antidote. The poison and the cure, because the same snake that poisoned you and bit you is the same snake that can give you the antivenom and cure you. So this is where medicine comes from. That's why Moses raised the shiny serpent. It wasn't a shiny donkey. It was a serpent because that which bit you and poisoned you, the fiery flying serpents, aka the seraphim that God sent from above as curses to the Israelites, Well, as above the curses, so below the cures. That which curses you is that which cures you. So the two pillars mark the entrance of Solomon's temple. So therefore, it's called the Serpent Body Temple Bible, because the Bible is a serpent body, but the temple is also a serpent body. The temple begins with two pillars, bows and jachin. It's the left and right eye. You must walk through the pillars. You become anointed. It's a symbolic metaphor that you've been initiated. This is why the Pope must knight a king. So if you want to become a knight, you must be knighted. So back then, the titles signify the function. A knight is knighted. A Christ is Christed. An initiate is initiated. A Messiah is Mashak, rubbed and painted upon. So to be the anointed one, you got to be anointed. The Pope places his sword on the left and right shoulder of the soon-to-be prince or king. It means he has successfully passed through the pillars of initiation. One snake goes down and gives you the poison. One snake goes up and gives you the cure. The two pillars mark the entrance, noun, which is a doorway to a physical space. But the two poisons, the dual dose together, the venom, is the agent of entrancement, called the Black Death. To entrance is to let into a mental state. Entrancement is entering a trance state, the state required for prophecy. A prophecy, noun, is an inspired speech. A prophet prophesies to give a prophecy. A diviner, noun, divines, verb. True divination is altered consciousness. A mystery is not something to be solved. Mystery means to initiate. So a mystery rite is an initiation path. The path to initiation is anointing a ritual chemical venom-based medicine technology for inducing entrancement plus enchantment, which is true divination or true divine utterance. Ancient seers describe a state described as ecstasy, ecstasis to stand outside oneself. Greek mantomai, to prophesy under influence. Latin divinatio, the act of being filled with God, possession by God. All prophets are taken away and become radiant. To be in the spirit is to be taken up. Enoch becomes Metatron. The rapture, Latin raptura, means abducting. So the rapture? So God raptures or lifts the chosen ones and leaves the rest to purge in a lake of fire. He cleanses the world with fire, pyrification. The first time he purified the world with water, now he pyrifies the world with fire. And only the chosen are saved and taken away. Hence, rapture means to seize, to abduct. Entranced. When the mind veil is lifted, torn or burned, what's left is the needle, the eye, the 0 point, pure symmetry of motion. So the high priest enters the holiest chamber of the entire temple, the Holy of Holies, once every single year. The Holy of Holies is not a place, it's a time. When you align and sync the two hemispheres of the brain, that neurological alignment releases the voice of God, where the high priest listens and then utters to the rest of the people what he has seen. So that revelation, that truth that emerges from hemispherical sync is what happens when Jesus dies. The veil is torn. The reveal happens while the damned are cursed and left here to burn in a lake of fire. So God cleanses the world with fire. He pyrifies it. Pyrification. The first time he flooded the world, it was purification. That's why the Bible says, I was baptized by water, but the one coming is going to baptize me with fire. You were born out of your mother's watery womb the first time. That was the first initiation, the first portal. The second time, you will be born again by fire. So Jesus was bitten by a snake in the garden, and that's why he says, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. This is usually translated as, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? But he uses the root kathon, which is Erichthonius, the serpent king. And he says, I thirst. Because when you're bit by a snake, you develop extreme thirst. So he is given vinegar on a sponge, which is the antidote. Hence he says, I am the Alpha and the Omega. I am the micro and the macro dose. The poison and the cure, the dark and the light. Jesus calls himself the stairway between heaven and earth. Jesus said there will be angels ascending and descending upon the Son of Man. So he is both heaven and earth. Like this, the serpent is earthly, the human is heavenly. A Naga in Hinduism, in Sanskrit, is semi-divine, which means half human, half divine. Jesus calls himself the stairway between heaven and earth. It's clear as day. That's why he says sabachthon. Everyone knows Jesus is both fully human and fully divine. And they always reference the scripture in John where it says, "And the Word became flesh, and he made his dwelling among us. And he pitched his tent. He tabernacled among us." He is hard light, light and heavy, light and dark. He is subtle and gross, spirit and matter, heaven and earth, the conscious and the subconscious, fully awake. Now I promise you're not going to hear this anywhere, but God separated the conscious mind from the subconscious mind. Now it's time to reconcile the two. And know thyself. Moses didn't just raise a serpent, it was a shiny serpent that he made out of copper. Copper corresponds to the planet Venus. They share the same alchemical symbol. So the metal copper shares the same symbol with the planet Venus, or the luminary Venus. Moses raised the shiny serpent to offer the light of awareness to those ready to shed the darkness of ignorance. The people who were bitten by the serpent's scent from God above only needed to stare at this shiny copper serpent that Moses fashioned. He basically offered the light of knowledge and wisdom and awareness to those who were blinded by the darkness of ignorance. They didn't know that the antivenom was in the venom. So he offered them a choice. He said, if you stare at the snake, you will live. All they had to do was turn their heads towards that serpent. They had to make a choice. They had to leave the ignorance of their own minds towards awareness of mind. That's why Hippocrates said, before you heal someone, first ask them if they are willing to give up that which makes them sick. Turn towards awareness, and you have no need to be afraid or sad or angry. Thank you, Santos Bonacci, who said, if you don't see it, you're not looking. So, this is the age of Aquarius, the age of truth, the age of knowing. What I'm saying is the answer is here. The answer is there. It's right in front of you. Not the actual serpent itself as an idol to be worshipped, but knowledge, truth, awareness itself is key. And Jesus said, just as Moses lifted the serpent in the wilderness, so must the Son of Man be lifted up. So the Israelites in the desert were healed by the light of awareness brought to them by Moses. So Moses put the serpent on a staff for the world to stare and to be healed. God put his Son on a cross for the world to witness and to be healed. Not by believing in him, that's what they say. Well, the Bible even says that he is the truth, the way, and the life. So don't worship him to save you. Follow his path, and the way he saved himself, you can save yourself. Simple. Awareness is what saved them, not vision, not the idol of the serpent. It was light in the eye. The eye is the only one of the five senses that requires light to see. So putting light in their eyes represents replacing their ignorant awareness with enlightened and awakened awareness. This bronze serpent that Moses made was even destroyed in the Bible. They destroyed it because people were worshiping the actual object instead of getting the hint. He wasn't saying worship the snake to be healed. He was saying take your minds out of darkness. Bring it up towards the light. He literally held the light up in the air and had them stare up at it. So he uplifted them. He carried them out from darkness to light. It's the best symbolic metaphor you can ever think of. So the Naga anoints the Maga. The serpent anoints or enlightens Eve in Genesis. Eve enlightens Adam. The Maga anoints the Mago. He becomes a priest, a prophet, a king, a Christ. And that's why the high priest enters once a year and speaks to God. He's speaking as God. When Jesus dies, the veil is torn. The old self dies and the mind veil dissolves. what's left is awareness. When the asymmetric dual mind dissolves, what's left is the closest we can get to conscious symmetry, known symmetry. Too much symmetry ceases to exist. That's called relative stillness. When everything is the same, front, back, left, and right, well, then there's no possible way to differentiate what from what. Nothing's faster, nothing's slower, nothing's darker, nothing's lighter. Therefore, all you need is the slightest asymmetry and all hell breaks loose. So just like this arc and these angels represent bilateral symmetry, they're literally facing each other, mirroring each other, just like the two hemispheres of your brain. While taking in the chemical agent, the porphyras, the burning purple theriac, along with the galene, the calm after the storm, it causes hemisphere synchronization, which is why they're mirroring each other. This is neurological alignment. So the venom dissolves asymmetry to allow you to see the true symmetry behind all things. But true initiation was never the venom. Entering symmetry without chemical force. What we call higher dimensions and higher states are not places to reach. They're shifts in consciousness. Consciousness synchronizes with different symmetries of motion. Seeing God or experiencing heaven or nirvana means you are perceiving symmetry without collapsing. Heaven is what consciousness experiences when it can remain in highly symmetrical states of motion without fragmenting. When these prophetic states were reached, it was called the other side of the dark star. Oracular speech is the description of what is seen when symmetry replaces polarity. I'm not talking about symmetry of geometry or physical things. This is symmetry of motion. Think about magnetism, the invisible force of magnetic repulsion. God made heaven and earth and separated the waters above from the waters below. So where was God before heaven was made? God was never in heaven. Heaven and earth split from the one, which is the 0 point at the center. Everything else moves. So the center is not actual stillness, it's relative stillness. See, nothing is still, and there's never nothing, there's always something. Everything moves. If it doesn't move, it doesn't exist. All physicality is sustained by motion. So even relative stillness moves, it's just moving so symmetrically you can't tell what's moving, what's what, or where is where. This is stabilized symmetry. Everything outside of it is stabilized asymmetry. Unstable symmetry is what causes asymmetry, and all reality is stabilized asymmetry, basically frozen asymmetry, or asymmetry held still due to its structure, the toroidal confinement of magnetism. The venom aligns the hemispheres because it dissolves the neurological asymmetry, and it allows access to symmetry-dominant perception. It's called the mercy seat, not because God shows you mercy and spares your life. It's because snake poison is dangerous. The prophet can tolerate neurological symmetry, lucid dreaming, or lucid vision. He can bring the subconscious mind into the conscious. It's the opposite of being conscious within the subconscious mind, which is lucid dreaming, being aware within the dream. It doesn't mean you create things in this reality like you do in your dreams. Okay, so there's 4 types of consciousness. So there's 2 dream states and 2 wake states. The first sleep state was when you dream and you're the witness to the dream. The subconscious mind is dominant. The second type of dream is where the conscious mind is now present in the subconscious space and it's aware where it is, and it actually starts to have control over the mind, the subconscious mind. So now it's not just mind above matter, it's awareness above mind, above matter. When you wake up, you're consciously aware, but it's normal consciousness. Superconsciousness is when you bring your subconscious mind into the conscious waking reality, and this is how people can draw or paint without any references from scratch. They can paint something like the Mona Lisa because they can see it, their mind eyes projecting in front of them into their perception. So mind creates the dream when your awareness controls the mind. Otherwise, mind controls what the awareness sees. when the subconscious mind is more dominant than the regular conscious awareness. So to be super aware, super conscious, is to be able to turn that switch on and off at will. These states are not half conscious and half subconscious. It's where the conscious mind and the subconscious mind are both dominant. But if the subconscious mind is more dominant than the conscious mind, that's when you get hallucinations and distorted reality. So the goal is not to walk around having hallucinations. The goal is to control what you want to see and bend the light in your mind to see what you want to see. And that's how you can draw what you're seeing. You can see a face in your mind's eye, and now you can draw. You don't have to close your eyes to do it, though. You can have your eyes open and still do it. And that's what sleep paralysis is all about, hallucinations, etc. So it's simple. Poison and a cure are differentiated by the dosage. Poison is a macro dose. A cure is a micro dose. So the subconscious mind and the conscious mind are fighting over which one is more dominant. Can your conscious mind dominate the subconscious mind? That's what determines whether you have a lucid dream or a regular dream. Can you make your subconscious mind dominate the conscious mind at will? So that means you're well balanced. It's like, can you draw with your right hand? Can you draw with your left hand? A lot of people are only dominant with their conscious minds and not their subconscious minds. So that's what this trance state does, is it introduces you to the symmetry, the near symmetry, and now you want to replicate that naturally without the chemical inducements. God or ether or 0 point is zero gradient, zero pressure, zero motion, zero light. It's relative stillness. It appears to be still, motionless, nothingness, but it's everything, and it's moving. It's just so symmetrical you couldn't tell. Unnoticeable to the eye, immeasurable. There's nothing to measure. There's no backdrop to measure against. Proof that ether is symmetry and everything comes from this pure symmetry of motion. Everything else is asymmetrical motion, stabilized. That means nothing is still, everything is moving. That means the universe didn't start. There wasn't a big bang where everything was still and everything started to move. Everything always moves. Everything is just not always relatively still. All stabilized asymmetrical matter wants to find equilibrium back to symmetry. So everything is near symmetrical. Your heart is not directly in the middle, it's kind of off to the left. You have a dominant hand. It's near symmetry in structure, but it's stabilized asymmetry in essence.